Before she can answer an invitation, the Alpha King shows up furious and jealous, saying she's busy. The sun had almost disappeared behind the jagged mountains, leaving the sky painted in bruised shades of violet and deep crimson. In the quiet village at the edge of the dark forest, the air was thick with the scent of wet leaves and moss. Lyra moved carefully along the cobbled path, her fingers brushing the soft edges of wildflowers as if to remind herself of the simple beauty of life. The envelope in her hand felt heavy, though it was made of the finest silk paper. It was an invitation to a royal event, to the castle of the Alpha King. Lyra had never been invited to anything like this. She was a simple girl, known for her quiet nature and a strange gift she had carried since childhood. She could see the invisible threads of fate. Sometimes they glimmered like silver filaments, winding between people, connecting them in ways most would never notice. Other times, they coiled like shadowy vines, warning her of danger. She sat on a worn wooden bench near the fountain in the village square, staring at the envelope. The invitation smelled faintly of jasmine, and the ink shimmered in the fading light. Her heart beat faster with a mixture of fear and curiosity. What did the Alpha King want with her? Why had he chosen her among thousands of villagers? A sudden rustle made her start. The shadows of the tall trees seemed to sway unnaturally, though the wind was still. Lyra's eyes widened as she saw a tall figure step from the darkness. His presence was commanding, almost like the forest itself bowed to him. Black hair framed a face sharp as carved stone, and eyes, golden, piercing, dangerous, locked onto hers. "You were about to answer it, weren't you?" His voice was low, edged with anger, yet under it, something unspoken lingered. Concern, fear, or something more. Lyra froze, clutching the invitation to her chest. "Who are you?" she whispered, though part of her already knew. The stories of the Alpha King, Kao, were whispered even in the most humble corners of the village. A man feared and respected, untouchable and untamed. "I am Kao," he said simply, his gaze never leaving hers. "And you are busy." Lyra blinked, confused. "I haven't answered yet." "Why are you?"
He stepped closer, and the air around him seemed to tighten, as if the night itself shrank back. "You cannot go."
"Not tonight, not ever, until I say so." There was no question in his voice, only a command. Her heart raced, not with fear alone, but with something far more complex, a strange pull she could not name. "But I don't understand," she murmured. "The invitation?" Gale's jaw tightened. His hands were clenched, not from anger alone, but from a deeper struggle, a shadow that lurked in his golden eyes. "It is not for your safety," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "It is for yours and mine. Some things cannot be risked. Some threads must not be cut until the right moment." She could see threads of life, of fate, of desire and sorrow, but even her eyes could not untangle the knot that tied her to Kao. A silver thread shimmered faintly between them, coiling and twisting in ways that made her breath catch. It was alive, almost conscious, and it hummed with a quiet insistence. "I don't know why you," she began, but Kao interrupted. "You do not choose your fate, Lyra," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to echo through the trees. "You only follow it or fight it, but fighting is dangerous." Very dangerous. She wanted to step back, to run, to throw the invitation away and pretend this had never happened. Yet her feet were rooted to the ground. His presence was like a storm, terrifying yet impossible to resist. "You think I am afraid," he said, almost laughing softly. "But it is not fear that drives me, it is everything I have lost, everything I might lose if I let go." He paused, and for a moment the sharpness of his anger softened into something almost tender, almost human. I cannot afford mistakes. Not anymore. The wind picked up and the shadows of the forest stretched across the path. Lyra's fingers trembled as she held the envelope. Mistakes? I am not a mistake, she whispered. No, Cale said, stepping closer until the heat from his body brushed against hers. You are... But the world does not know how to handle threads like yours, and threads like mine are dangerous. Together, we might unravel more than we intend. Lyra's mind spun. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but her voice caught in her throat. She could feel the silver thread between them vibrate, pull, insist. It was not just fate, it was a bond, unseen yet undeniable. Cale's eyes narrowed. Do you feel it? He asked. Do you feel the thread that binds us? Lyra nodded, though she didn't fully understand.
I think so. It feels strange.
Like it wants me to follow, but it also warns me. Cale's expression hardened again.
That is because it is not yet ready. Not yet.
There is a storm coming, Lyra, and I cannot let you face it unprepared. Before she could respond, the distant howl of wolves echoed through the forest. Lyra shivered, and Cale's eyes flicked toward the sound. See? Danger is already near. The invitation would have led you straight into it. He moved with a grace that seemed unnatural, almost like he melted into the shadows, yet his gaze never left her. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. The pull of the thread grew stronger, insistent, almost like a heartbeat syncing with hers. You may not understand now, Cale said softer this time, but one day you will. Fate, destiny, it has a way of showing us the path only when we are ready. Lyra's hand tightened around the envelope.
And if I refuse? She asked quietly.
Cale's gaze softened, but only for a fleeting moment. Refusing is not a choice when the threads are already woven.
You can fight, but you cannot undo what has begun. A silence fell between them, heavy and charged.
The shadows of the trees seemed to lean closer, the night holding its breath. Lyra could feel the pull of destiny, stronger than fear, stronger than reason. Her curiosity, her longing, and the strange thrill of being seen, truly seen, by someone like Cale, all collided inside her. Then, without another word, Cale stepped back. The wind rose sharply, rustling the leaves, and in the blink of an eye he was gone. Only a single token remained where he had stood, a small pendant shaped like a silver key, glowing faintly in the dim light. Lyra bent down, picking it up. Her fingers brushed the cool metal, and the moment she touched it, her vision blurred. Threads of silver and shadow wove themselves around her, forming patterns she had never seen before. The thread connecting her to Cale pulsed strongly, as if alive. It called to her, tugged at her very soul.
What does this mean?
She whispered to herself, the wind carrying her words into the dark forest. The forest seemed to answer. Shadows shifted, shapes flickered in the corners of her vision, and a whisper, soft and distant, reached her ears. Follow. Follow. Lyra's heart beat faster. The invitation in her hand suddenly felt like a key, but so did the silver pendant. One path promised the safety of the known, the life she had always lived. The other, the unknown, the danger, the pull of destiny, and Cale himself. Her fingers trembled as she held both. She knew that choosing either path would change her life forever. The thread between her and Cale pulsed once, sharply, as if impatient. Her chest tightened. Fear battled with longing, reason with destiny. Every instinct screamed at her to stay, yet another voice, quiet but undeniable, urged her to step into the unknown. Lyra took a deep breath, gripping the pendant tightly. The forest around her seemed to lean closer, as if the night itself waited for her decision. Somewhere deep in the shadows of the trees, Cale's eyes watched, and though he had disappeared, she felt his presence like a heartbeat echoing through her veins. The night was alive with whispers, with unseen threads, with promises she could not yet understand. And in the stillness, she realized the truth. She was not merely being watched, she was being called. A storm of destiny had begun. And Lyra knew deep in her heart that the first step could not be taken back. The forest seemed to exhale as she rose to her feet. With the pendant in her hand, the invitation tucked safely in her cloak, she began to follow the invisible threads, toward Cale, toward the unknown, toward a destiny that had chosen her long before she had chosen it herself. And somewhere in the shadows, a pair of golden eyes gleamed, furious, jealous, and waiting. The forest seemed alive, breathing with a quiet rhythm that matched Lyra's racing heartbeat. The pendant in her hand pulsed like a distant drum, each beat urging her forward. Shadows stretched and twisted among the trees, yet none dared touch her. She could feel the silver thread linking her to Cale, shimmering faintly through the darkness, pulling her steps as if it had its own will. Her legs ached, and her breath came in shallow bursts, but she did not stop. Every step carried her closer to the fortress she had only ever seen in whispered tales, the home of the Alpha King. Even the wind seemed to guide her path, pushing her gently when the underbrush slowed her, rustling leaves like soft warnings. Finally, through the dense trees, she glimpsed the fortress. It rose from the land like a dark crown, black stone walls glittering faintly in the moonlight. Towers spiraled upward, ending in sharp points that seemed to pierce the night sky. The gates were massive, wrought from iron and etched with sigils that pulsed faintly, symbols of old magic and protective wards. Lyra approached cautiously, her fingers brushing the pendant. "Cale," she whispered. The thread shivered, vibrating stronger than ever. She felt it connect not just to him, but to the fortress itself, as if the building breathed with his presence. Suddenly the gates creaked open. A hush of cold air swept out, carrying the faint scent of smoke, iron, and something else. Something older, darker. Lyra stepped inside, and the doors closed behind her with a resounding thud. The forest was gone, replaced by shadowed halls, towering ceilings, and a chill that made her shiver despite herself. The interior was alive with whispers of magic. Candles floated along the walls without flame, flickering in patterns that almost spoke. Portraits of women and men lined the halls, faces painted with sorrow, hope, and longing. Lyra's eyes widened. Threads connected some of them, faint and silver, like the one between her and Cale. She realized with a shiver that these were not mere paintings. They were echoes, ghosts of souls bound to Cale's fate. A sudden movement caught her attention. Cale stepped from a shadowed archway, his presence filling the hall, golden eyes sharp and intense.
"You followed it,"
he said, voice low but edged with approval and frustration.
"I warned you."
"Some things in this fortress are not meant for the curious." Lyra swallowed, clutching the pendant. I couldn't stop. The thread, it pulled me. Cale's eyes softened briefly, the golden glow dimming to something almost human.
"Fate is stubborn," he murmured.
"And threads like ours are stubborn too."
He paused, studying her. "You do not understand yet."
This place, my life, it is not safe.
"Not for you, not yet."
Lyra stepped closer. "Then teach me. Show me."
"I want to understand." A flicker of surprise crossed Cale's face, quickly replaced by the usual mask of control. "Curiosity is dangerous,"
he said.
but perhaps necessary. He gestured to a hidden door at the far end of the hall.
Follow me, but know this. What you see may frighten you. It may change you, and once you see it, you cannot turn back.
Lyra followed silently, her heart pounding. The door opened into a circular chamber bathed in silver light. At its center was a pedestal, upon which lay a large, ancient book bound in black leather. Silver threads snaked across the floor, connecting the book to the walls, the ceiling, and the floor, weaving patterns of fate in a language older than time.
"This is the Chamber of Threads," Kale said quietly, his voice reverent. "It holds the stories of those who came before you, and the warnings of those who could not break free."
Lyra approached the pedestal, running her fingers lightly over the threads. They vibrated beneath her touch, thrumming like a heartbeat. "They're alive," she whispered. They feel like people, not just magic." Kale's gaze was fixed on her. "They are memories, echoes, lessons." Many of them tried to untangle the threads of destiny and failed. They became trapped between the weave of life and death, between freedom and fate. You have the gift, Lyra, but gifts are burdens as often as blessings. Lyra shivered. Kale stepped closer. "Then the threads will claim you, as they claimed them." His voice was soft now, almost a whisper, but his golden eyes blazed with intensity. "I will not let that happen."
"Not if I can help it." Lyra looked at him, sensing the weight behind his words.
There was more than caution in his gaze. There was a tether, an invisible bond linking him to her, one she could feel, but could not yet understand. Why do you care?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Kale hesitated, as if the question had pierced a wall he had built centuries ago. Then he said, "Because you are part of it now. Part of the thread that could save or destroy me." The words chilled her. "Save you?" Kale's jaw tightened. "The curse," he said, his voice dropping. "It follows me, binds me, shadows me. It is not just a chain. It is a storm inside me, one that I cannot control. And if it is not broken, it will consume everything. The kingdom, the people, and anyone foolish enough to stand close to me." Lyra's fingers trembled over the threads, "And the threads connect to me. Why?" "Because you have a gift I cannot possess," Kale said. "You can see them, untangle them, you can guide them, perhaps even break them." His golden eyes softened. "I cannot. Not anymore. Not without help." Lyra swallowed, overwhelmed by the weight of his words and the truth in them. She felt a pull stronger than the thread, a force that tugged at her heart, at her very soul. She wanted to run, yet every instinct whispered that she must stay. Then the threads in the chamber pulsed violently, shaking the walls with a sudden force. The book on the pedestal opened by itself, pages flipping wildly as if caught in a storm. Shadows coalesced along the edges of the room, forming shapes that flickered between human and animal, light and dark. Lyra stepped back, clutching the pendant. Kyle moved instantly, standing between her and the shadows. His hands glowed faintly, golden light burning against the encroaching darkness. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice sharp. "Do not let fear guide your steps." The shadows hissed and twisted, testing him, testing the bond between them. Lyra's gift flared. Threads shimmered across the room, connecting the shadows to the pedestal, to Kale, to herself. She realized with a shock that the threads were trying to draw her in, to make her part of the chaos. "Liar!" Kale's voice snapped her out of the spiral of fear.
Focus! You can guide them! Her hands trembled, but she reached out. Silver threads responded to her touch, weaving and twisting in harmony with her heartbeat. Slowly the shadows recoiled, shrinking back as the threads pulsed with her control. Kale's eyes softened, relief flickering across his face. "Good," he murmured. "You are stronger than I imagined, stronger than many before you." Lyra exhaled, her chest heaving. I don't understand it all. But I felt it. I felt the pull, the need, the connection. Kale stepped closer, his golden eyes fixed on hers. The connection is real. You and I, our threads are entwined. This is why I cannot let you go. This is why I cannot let you answer invitations or step into the world unprotected. Every moment apart is a risk, not just to you, but to the balance itself. Lyra's lips parted, but no words came. Her heart was pounding, and she felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mixture of fear, longing, and something she could not yet name. Kale's expression softened, almost imperceptibly, before returning to its usual mask of command. We must prepare. The threads are growing restless. The curse, it watches. It waits. And soon it will test us both in ways we cannot yet imagine. Lyra nodded, gripping the pendant tightly. The threads between them shimmered stronger than ever, pulling her closer to him, to the fortress, to the fate she could no longer deny.
As the shadows in the chamber settled, a single whisper floated in the air, almost imperceptible but chilling in its clarity.
But the storm has only begun. Lyra felt the silver thread pulse violently, as if echoing the warning. She looked at Kale, his golden eyes glowing softly, and realized that their destinies were entwined far beyond the walls of the fortress, far beyond any invitation, far beyond her understanding. Her hand brushed the pendant. The pull of destiny was stronger than fear. She knew one thing with absolute certainty. She could not turn back. The Alpha King had shown her the threads, the curse, the bond, and now, the night itself waited for her choice. The wind howled through the fortress towers, carrying whispers of danger that made even the bravest guards uneasy. Lyra stood in the highest hall of Kale's fortress, looking out at the dark forest beyond. The silver pendant in her hand pulsed with an urgent rhythm, as if sensing the unrest in the world outside. The threads between her and Kale shimmered faintly, coiling like restless serpents. Kale stepped beside her, his golden eyes scanning the horizon. His expression was tense, controlled, yet there was an unmistakable edge of worry that he could not hide. "They are coming," he said quietly, almost to himself. "The forces that seek the throne and the power you carry." Lyra turned to him. I felt it," she admitted. "Last night, the threads, they pulled strongly, as if warning us." "Are they the ones?" Call nodded. "Yes, they are cunning. They have waited for a moment like this, a moment when the kingdom is vulnerable, and the bond between us is still untested." He paused, then added, "We will have to rely on one another more than ever." Her first confrontation with the shadows in the chamber had been a warning, not a battle. She felt fear, yes, but also a strange thrill. The pull of destiny, the need to protect Kale, and the deep, unspoken connection between them. "I'm ready," she said softly, clutching the pendant. "Tell me what to do." Kale's lips pressed into a thin line. "It is not enough to try. You must focus. The threads will guide you, but they will also test your heart, your courage, and your understanding of me." Before Lyra could ask what he meant, a distant rumble shook the fortress. Windows rattled, torches flickered, and the shadows in the halls deepened unnaturally. Kale's gaze sharpened. "They are closer than I thought," he muttered. "Prepare yourself." Lyra nodded, though her heart raced. The threads pulsed faster, wrapping around her like a protective shroud. She could feel Kale's presence beside her, strong and steady, yet tinged with an intensity that made her chest ache. Suddenly, the great doors of the hall burst open. Figures cloaked in black surged forward, moving with unnatural speed. Their eyes glowed faintly red, and the threads of fate that connected them twisted chaotically, seeking to ensnare both Lyra and Kale. Kale moved with astonishing speed. One moment he was beside Lyra. The next he was in front of the intruders, his hands glowing with golden light. The shadows shrieked as his power met theirs, striking with force that made the stone floor quake. "Lyra!" Kale shouted. "Use the pendant!" Guide the threads. Her fingers closed around the silver key, and immediately the threads responded. She felt them coil around the intruders, pulling them back, twisting their movements, and forcing them to stagger. Lyra focused, breath steadying, heart racing. Slowly, she began to guide the threads in harmony with Kale's power, creating a barrier that held the attackers at bay. Kale's eyes never left hers. "Good. Now push further," he commanded, moving like a shadow among them, his golden hands flaring with light as he struck. Lyra's confidence grew. The pendant pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, and she realized that the threads did not just connect her to Kale, they connected her to the very magic of the fortress. With each movement, she could feel the balance shift, the shadows retreating, struggling against the combined force of their bond. Yet one figure broke through the barrier, faster and stronger than the others. It lunged at Lyra, threads snapping dangerously close to her skin. Kale's shout echoed in her ears. "Stay close to me," he barked, intercepting the figure with a strike of light that sent it crashing into the wall. Lyra's pulse raced, but she realized something unsettling. The more she fought, the more she felt drawn to the attacker. Not with attraction, no, but a strange, heavy recognition. As if this shadow were tied to the same web of destiny that bound her to Kale. Kale noticed her hesitation. His golden eyes narrowed. "Loya!" "Focus! Do not let them touch you, not even in thought." Her hand tightened around the pendant. The threads vibrated violently, almost like a warning. She forced her mind to concentrate, guiding the silver strands with precision, and the remaining attackers faltered, retreating under the combined pressure of Kale's light and her threads. The hall fell silent. The attackers had vanished, leaving only faint smoke and the lingering echo of their shrieks. Lyra's chest heaved and she leaned against the wall, trembling. Kale approached, his golden light dimming to a soft glow. "You did well," he said, voice low, almost tender. "Stronger than I expected." Lyra looked at him, breathless. I felt it. I could feel the threads guiding them, pushing them back. But one of them, it felt like it knew me. Kale's eyes darkened. "It did," he admitted quietly. Some forces, some shadows, have followed the threads for centuries. They recognize the bond, even if they do not understand it. Lyra's fingers trembled. "Why are we connected like this? Why me?" Kale stepped closer, the golden glow highlighting the sharp planes of his face. "Because you have a gift I cannot possess. You can see, guide, and untangle threads that even I, the Alpha King, cannot. And because, perhaps, the threads themselves chose you." A long silence followed. Lyra felt the weight of his words pressing on her, the intensity of his gaze, the quiet longing that lurked beneath his control. She wanted to speak, to ask the questions swirling in her mind, but the words caught in her throat. Kale reached out, almost gently, then placed a hand over hers, the pendant between their palms. The pulse of the threads surged, connecting their hearts in a way that was more than magic, more than fate. It was a bond, fragile yet undeniable, that neither could ignore. But before either could acknowledge it, a sudden tremor shook the fortress. The walls groaned, and the air grew heavy.
thick with the scent of smoke and old magic. Lyra felt the threads pull violently, dragging her toward the center of the hall. Cale's eyes flared. "The curse," he whispered, voice tight with fear.
"It has sensed the disturbance. It is coming."
The shadows began to gather again, more solid this time, twisting into shapes that were half human, half beast. They circled the room, closing in, eyes glowing red, threads snapping toward Lyra with a hunger that made her shiver. Call moved to shield her, golden light radiating from him, but the shadows were relentless. They lunged, striking at him with a force that made the floor crack. Lyra felt a wave of fear, sharp and cold, yet beneath it, something else rose, determination. She grasped the pendant tightly, focusing on the threads. They responded, shimmering silver in the dim light, coiling around the shadows, twisting them away from Cale. But one shadow broke free, faster than the others, and struck Cale's shoulder, forcing him to stagger. "No!" Lyra cried, reaching out instinctively. The threads responded to her panic, wrapping around Cale, pulling him back, stabilizing him. Cale steadied himself, golden eyes blazing. "Lyra!" Now, her hands moved with instinct and power, the threads weaving a web of light and silver that caught the shadows, binding them, twisting them into containment. The pendant glowed fiercely, pulsing with the rhythm of her heartbeat and Cale's energy. Finally, with a shriek that echoed through the hall, the shadows dissipated, dissolving into smoke that vanished into the ceiling. The fortress was silent once more. Lyra sank to her knees, exhausted, trembling, her hands still clutching the pendant. Cale knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said quietly. "You are stronger than you know. But this is only the beginning." Lyra looked at him, her chest heaving. "What do you mean?" Cale's golden eyes darkened, filled with a weight he could not hide. "The threads are not just a guide.
They are a warning. The more we fight, the more the shadows will come.
And there is one who has been waiting for this moment, one who knows the bond between us and wants to destroy it." Lyra's stomach tightened. "Who?" Cale hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I do not know yet, but I will find them."
"And I will stop them. You..."
You must trust the threads. Trust yourself. Trust me."
Her hands trembled as she nodded.
The threads pulsed strongly, entwining her with Cale's presence. Their bond was no longer invisible. It was alive, vibrant, and dangerous in ways she could not yet comprehend. A distant whisper echoed through the hall, faint but unmistakable. "The bond is set, but the storm is not over." Cale stood, his golden eyes scanning the hall and the darkened corridors beyond. The danger was not gone. The storm had only begun. And in the shadows beyond the fortress, a figure watched, silent, patient, and waiting. Someone who knew the threads as well as Lyra and Cale did, and who would not rest until the bond between them was broken. The fortress trembled under the weight of a growing darkness. Shadows more solid than before coiled along the walls and floors, whispering secrets that chilled the bones of anyone who heard. Lyra stood in the grand throne room, the silver pendant in her hand pulsing violently, reflecting the threads that connected her to Cale. The Alpha King stood beside her, golden light emanating from his form, his eyes sharp and vigilant. "The curse," Cale said, his voice low but steady. "It knows we are ready. It has waited for this moment, and now it will strike with all its fury."
Lyra swallowed hard, feeling the pull of the threads in her chest.
Every fiber of her being ached with fear, but also with a strange resolve. The bond between her and Cale had grown stronger with each battle, each trial, each shared heartbeat. She knew now that they were not just connected by destiny, but by choice, by trust, and by the unspoken understanding that had bloomed between them. A sudden shadow swept across the throne room, dark and enormous, coiling like a living storm. Its voice echoed in the air, both inside her mind and around the walls.
"So, you believe you can break me?" it hissed, 1,000 whispered voices layered together. "You and the Alpha King, mere children of fate, playing with threads too strong for you." Kale's jaw tightened, golden light flaring from his hands. "I am no child of fate," he growled, "and she is stronger than you imagine." He took a step closer to Lyra, placing a protective hand lightly on her shoulder. The threads pulsed brighter, coiling around them like a shield. Lyra looked at him, seeing not just the powerful king, but the man who had fought centuries of his own curse, who had battled jealousy, anger, and solitude to stand here with her. Her fingers brushed the silver pendant, and she felt the threads respond, as if alive. She inhaled deeply, centering herself. "You cannot fight this alone," she whispered. We
must do it together." Kale's golden eyes softened, flickering with warmth beneath their usual intensity.
"Together," he repeated, and his hand tightened over hers on the pendant. "Then let us end this." The shadows surged forward, an endless wave of darkness that threatened to engulf the room. Lyra felt the threads flare violently, pulling her toward the center of the room where the curse's essence had manifested. She focused, letting the rhythm of the threads guide her movements. Each pulse connected her to Kael, their heartbeats syncing in a way that made the air between them hum with power. The curse took form, a towering figure of shadows and fire, eyes like burning coals, tendrils of darkness reaching out to snuff out the golden light. Lyra could feel its hunger, its malice, and the weight of every soul it had touched. She trembled, but she did not falter. Kale stepped in front of her, spreading his hands, his light flaring like the sun breaking through storm clouds.
"Lyra, now!"
he shouted. She raised the pendant, letting it pulse in time with the threads. She reached out with her gift, her mind and heart focused entirely on the connection, the bond, the golden thread that bound her to Kale. Slowly, carefully, she began to guide the silver strands around the shadow, weaving a web that pulled at its form, unraveling the threads of the curse itself. The curse roared, twisting, trying to resist, but the bond between Lyra and Kale was stronger than it had ever been. She could feel his power flowing through her, steady, precise, and protective. Every doubt, every fear melted away under the intensity of their combined force. "Do not falter," Kale said, his voice steady, commanding, yet filled with something deeper. A silent plea, a vow that he would not let her be lost. The threads shimmered like silver fire, wrapping around the shadow, binding it, unraveling its essence. The curse screamed, a sound that shook the walls and the ground beneath their feet, yet they did not release it. They held, together, heart and soul intertwined. A blinding light erupted from the pendant and from Kale's hands. The threads glowed like molten silver, weaving a cage that enveloped the shadow completely. Then, with a final pulse, the darkness shattered, dissipating into 1,000 fragments of shadow that vanished like smoke in the wind. The throne room was still, silent, peaceful. Lyra sank to her knees, breathless, trembling. The threads around her pulsed faintly, softer now, calmer. Kyle knelt beside her, placing a hand on her back. His golden eyes were softer, warmer than they had ever been.
"You did it," he said quietly, voice thick with relief.
We did it!
Lyra looked at him, the weight of what they had faced pressing on her. "We were bound to do it," she said softly. The threads, the bond, it guided us."
"But without you?"
Her voice faltered. Kale's hand moved to her cheek, brushing her hair back gently. "Without you, I would have failed," he said, his golden eyes locking with hers.
And not just tonight.
"Not ever. You are
Everything I could never allow myself to be before. Hope, light, trust. You are the bond I thought I had lost forever. Lyra's heart fluttered. She could feel the threads pulsing faintly around them, steady and warm, as if acknowledging their connection. A tear slid down her cheek, and KL brushed it away with the gentlest touch. "The curse is gone," he murmured. "The shadows will no longer haunt this place, not as they once did, but the bond remains, stronger than ever. And that is something even fate cannot unravel." Lyra leaned closer, her hand still holding the pendant. "Then what now?" she asked softly. Kale's gaze softened, golden light dimming to a warm glow. "Now," he said, voice low and reverent, "we rebuild. Not just the kingdom, not just the threads of fate, but ourselves. I have lived centuries in solitude, haunted by my curse, my own anger, my failures. And yet, here you are, showing me that even a king can be saved. Even a heart like mine can be healed." Lyra's breath caught, and I have never known such power, such connection. I never imagined that threads could feel this strong, this alive. KL smiled faintly, a rare human smile that lit up his golden eyes. "Then let us promise we face the future together. Whatever comes, whatever threads intertwine, we face it side by side." The pendant glowed softly in her hand, the silver threads pulsing gently around them. Lyra nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest, through the fortress, through the night itself. Their bond was not just magic. It was trust, understanding, and something far older, far stronger. Love born in the fires of danger and destiny. Outside the throne room, the kingdom breathed a quiet sigh. The forests were still, the winds calm, and even the moon seemed to shine brighter. The curse that had haunted Kale for centuries had been broken, and yet the threads of fate whispered of stories yet to be told. Kale turned, his golden eyes sweeping the hall. "We are not done," he said softly, almost to himself. "The threads are calm, yes, but destiny never sleeps." Lyra followed his gaze, feeling the pull of the threads stretching beyond the fortress, into the kingdom, into the world. "Then we face it together," she said firmly. He took her hand, their fingers entwining naturally, the silver pendant between them glowing softly. "Together," he echoed. For the first time in centuries, Kale allowed himself to hope. Not just for his kingdom, not just for the threads of fate, but for the bond he had found in Lyra. And Lyra, for the first time in her life, understood the true depth of her gift, that threads were not only woven to guide, but to connect hearts willing to embrace destiny. A quiet whisper drifted through the throne room, almost imperceptible, but the story is far from over. Lyra felt it, a gentle pull in her chest, a soft reminder of the world beyond, of challenges yet unseen, of threads still weaving their way through the night. Yet she did not feel fear. She felt strength, courage, and the unwavering certainty that she was not alone. Kale's hand tightened around hers. "Whatever comes next," he said, voice steady, golden light reflecting in his eyes. "We face it as one. The threads have chosen us, Lyra, and we..."
We choose each other. Lyra smiled, a soft, radiant smile that lit up the shadows.
"Then let them come," she said, voice steady. "We are ready." The throne room was silent, yet alive with the faint glow of the threads, shimmering silver and gold, entwining them, binding them, marking the beginning of a new chapter. Outside, the wind stirred softly through the towers, carrying whispers of destiny, prophecy, and the quiet promise that even in darkness, light and love could prevail. And somewhere in the forest, faint but certain, the shadows lingered no longer in malice, but in acknowledgement. a bond forged in courage, destiny, and the hearts of two souls who had found each other against the tides of fate. Lyra and Cale stood together, golden and silver threads shimmering around them. Their bond was alive, their hearts were awake. And the night, once filled with fear, now held the promise of a new dawn.